Hello. Hi, how's everybody doing? Okay, today we're reading from paper 178 of the Urantia book, Discourse on Sonship and Citizenship. Okay, so this is one of Jesus's last sermons to the apostles and his disciples before leaving the earth. Jesus talked to about 50 of his trusted followers for almost 2 hours and answered a score of questions regarding the relation of the kingdom of heaven to the kingdoms of this world, concerning the relation of sonship with God to citizenship in earthly governments. This discourse, together with his answers to questions, may be summarized and restated in modern language as follows. The kingdoms of this world, being material, may often find it necessary to employ physical force in the execution of their laws and for the maintenance of order. In the kingdom of heaven, true believers will not resort to the employment of physical force. The kingdom of heaven, being a spiritual brotherhood of the spirit-born sons of God, may be promulgated only by the power of the Spirit. This distinction of procedure refers to the relations of the kingdom of believers to the kingdoms of secular government and does not nullify the right of social groups of believers to maintain order in their ranks and administer discipline upon unruly and unworthy members. Okay, so you can belong to a country or belong to any other social group as well as belong to the kingdom of God. It doesn't have to be exclusive, you know? Right? Okay. This is Vinny. Vinny wants to come and say hi to everybody. Say hi, Vinny. Say hi, Vinny. There's Vinny. He's nice. There's nothing incompatible between sonship in the spiritual kingdom and sonship in the secular or civil government. It is the believer's duty to render to Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and to God the things which are God's. There cannot be any disagreement between these two requirements, the one being material and the other spiritual. Unless it should develop that a Caesar presumes to usurp the prerogatives of God and demand that spiritual homage and supreme worship be rendered to him. Okay, so there have been some kings in this world who have said, like, I'm God, or you have to worship me, or I get to decide what you're gonna believe in. That's why we have this cool thing called separation of church and state, which works really well for that. Yeah. That make sure that we don't have this kind of problem. Okay, my dear, what are you just want to cuddle? You just want to be petted right now. Well, it's not really a good time, but I try. Okay, I gotta read to the people. Okay, Vinny. Okay, yeah, okay. In such a case, you shall worship only God while you seek to enlighten such misguided earthly rulers, and in this way lead them also to the recognition of the Father in heaven. You shall not render spiritual worship to earthly rulers, neither should you employ the physical forces of earthly governments, whose rulers may sometime become believers in the work of furthering the mission of the spiritual kingdom. Ooh, that's an important distinction, because neither shall you use force like earthly force, right? The physical forces of earthly governments to further the work of the kingdom of God. So you can't go conquer a nation or people and tell them, well, guess what? Now you're Christian. Okay, it don't work like that. That's not what we're here to do. Aha! So we don't use coercive measures in furthering the work of the spiritual kingdom. I'm totally down with that. Absolutely, very important. Awesome. Sonship in the kingdom, or daughtership also. Okay, just or personship. For those of us who are child. I mean, that being a child of God, sonship in the kingdom, whatever, gender, non-specific or whatever. I don't care about that. I don't think God cares about gender. I just think it's anyway. Okay, enough. Okay, yeah. Okay, sonship in the kingdom, from the standpoint of advancing civilization, should assist you in becoming the ideal citizens of the kingdoms of this world, since brotherhood and service are the cornerstones of the gospel of the kingdom. The love call of the spiritual kingdom should prove to be the effective destroyer of the hate urge of the unbelieving and war-minded citizens of the earthly kingdoms. Yep, we got to use the love call. Yep. But these material-minded sons in darkness will never know of your spiritual light of truth unless you draw very near them with that unselfish social service, which is the natural outgrowth of the bearing of the fruits of the Spirit in the life experience of each individual believer. Okay. Okay, that makes total sense. As mortal and material men, you are indeed citizens of the earthly kingdoms, and you should be good citizens, all the better for having become reborn spirit sons of the heavenly kingdom. So because you become a spirit-born person, a Christian, or just, yeah, and I believe this applies to people who equally of other faiths too, besides just Christian, spirit-born, I think. Then you become a better citizen of the country that you live in. Better citizen, because you're more interested in life, in living well. Yeah, and contributing to the society that you live in. A faith enlightened and spirit liberated sons of the kingdom of heaven, you face a double responsibility of duty to man and duty to God, while you voluntarily assume a third and sacred obligation: service to the brotherhood of God-knowing believers. So we serve each other. We help each other. Okay. You may not worship your temporal rulers, and you should not employ temporal power in the furtherance of the spiritual kingdom, but you should manifest the righteous ministry of loving service to believers and unbelievers alike. Serve believers and unbelievers alike. Whoa. Yeah, because, how else are unbelievers going to become believers, But I think it's just, be nice to people, be good to people. In the gospel of the kingdom, there resides the mighty Spirit of truth. And presently I will pour out this same Spirit upon all flesh. The fruits of the Spirit, your sincere and loving service, are the mighty social lever to uplift the races of darkness. And this Spirit of truth will become your power multiplying fulcrum. Okay, that's an interesting concept of the Spirit of truth, a power multiplying fulcrum. So that I've always thought of the Spirit of truth as like my internal guide toward truth, so that I can, but I see that it's also here, this is a power multiplying fulcrum. It's also something that I can speak, something that comes through me or through um, the faithful, people who have faith, and it can bring lots of people together to the truth, which is very empowering. Okay. All right. I'm with that. I'll do my best, God. Display wisdom and exhibit sagacity in your dealings with unbelieving civil rulers. By discretion, show yourselves to be expert in ironing out minor disagreements and in adjusting trifling misunderstandings. In every possible way, in everything short of your spiritual allegiance to the rulers of the universe, seek to live peaceably with all men. Be you always as wise as serpents, but as harmless as doves. Very good. So we should be peacekeepers, peacemakers. Be generous and show discretion. Don't get into arguments with people about if there's God or if there's not God, or what does God want you to do? I mean, gosh, that's okay. I don't have to argue with people about that. It's all right if you want to, just don't hurt anybody. Don't hurt anybody. If you're worshiping God is offensive to somebody, do it somewhere else. You're supposed to pray in private anyway. That doesn't mean you have to be ashamed to be Christian or ashamed of your religion. Don't use it, and don't ever use it against anybody. I'm more Christian than you are. No, that's not good behavior. I don't believe so. You should be made all the better citizens of the secular government as a result of becoming enlightened sons of the kingdom. So should the rulers of earthly governments become all the better rulers in civil affairs as a result of believing this gospel of the heavenly kingdom. The attitude of unselfish service of man and intelligent worship of God should make all kingdom believers better world citizens, while the attitude of honest citizenship and sincere devotion to one's temporal duty should help to make such a citizen the more easily reached by the Spirit call to sonship in the heavenly kingdom. Excuse me. So basically, these things are mostly cooperative. Being a good citizen is being a good child of God. It's being a happy person, somebody who's involved in their community and in their life, and helping to steer everything away from conflict and toward good things. I think we all kind of like fantasize this. I see this Christian fantasy of like, I hope somebody challenges me about my faith, then I can demonstrate how godly I am, or how much I believe in God. Just go ahead and try to get me to renounce my Savior, or something like this. And that's, I don't think that's a good attitude. I don't think most these things, like people challenging each other over Christmas, here it's Christmas. Should we say we have to save Christmas? I mean, Christmas is fine. Don't, you know what I mean? If somebody comes and says you have to believe this way or you're not going to go to heaven, then that's when and if he does that personally, I think then you just walk away and said, oh, you're full of crap. Yeah, okay. I whatever. But if somebody is doing that publicly, if there's a leader doing that publicly, that's when we raise up and fight and say, no, you're wrong. And you got to quit making people feel bad about what they believe. You're full of, no, don't do that. And you don't make it okay for people to do that, to use faith against people. And that happens in a lot of societies. I'm not going to name any, but this is something that does happen. But that's where the line is drawn in my interpretation. I know there's some people that might not agree with me. I'll let you disagree with me. Go ahead, talk to me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So long as the rulers of earthly governments seek to exercise the authority of religious dictators. Aha! That's exactly what I'm talking about. You who believe this gospel can expect only trouble, persecution, and even death. Right. If the rulers of earthly governments are going to tell the people what to believe, they're going to be religious dictators, then we got trouble. That's why we got separation of church and state. That's what it's for. And I know a lot of Christians will say, well, we got to make this a Christian country because, and thing is, we don't have to. I don't think we have to. I think that we have to let everybody believe as they want. And if we show everybody that dignity, they're going to show us that dignity. And it's going to be nothing but, because, it's all one God. I think that Muslims, when they're worshiping the same God that I worship. It's the same thing. It's just different words, different language, different culture. It doesn't matter. They're not doing us any problem. They're not giving us any problems. Right. Okay, where did I go? But the very light which you bear to the world, and even the very manner in which you will suffer and die for this gospel of the kingdom, will in themselves eventually enlighten the whole world and result in the gradual divorcement of politics and religion. They need to be divorced. Separation of church and state. There it is. The persistent preaching of this gospel of the kingdom will someday bring to all nations a new and unbelievable liberation, intellectual freedom, and religious liberty. That's where it's at. That's awesome. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. So the raising of governments based on religion, stop. Don't do it. Stop it. Keep it separate. Please. Under the soon coming persecutions by those who hate this gospel of joy and liberty, you will thrive and the kingdom will prosper. Yep. But you will stand in grave danger in subsequent times when most men will speak well of kingdom believers and many in high places nominally accept the gospel of the heavenly kingdom. Learn to be faithful to the kingdom even in times of peace and prosperity. Tempt not the angels of your supervision to lead you in troublous ways as a loving disciple designed to save your ease-drifting souls. So even if, if you live in a country here who you can, under the persecutions, you will thrive and the kingdom will prosper. Yep. But don't, I think this is speaking, this paragraph here, because they nominally accept the gospel of the heavenly kingdom. Learn to be faithful even times in peace and prosperity. I think this is speaking to, say, like Christians in America. This is by and large a Christian country, and it's easy to just go around and say that, yeah, you're a Christian and prosper for being a Christian, but we're being faithful to the gospel means that we have to defend the religious rights of all the people, especially religious minorities who do not enjoy the same rights that I do. That's my a lot of my Muslim friends, some of my Native American brothers and sisters, and I being a good Christian to me means that I stand in defense of their rights as well, to believe as they do, as well as for my own. I think that's what that's saying. Remember that you are commissioned to preach this gospel of the kingdom, the supreme desire to do the Father's will, coupled with the supreme joy of the faith realization of sonship with God. And you must not allow anything to divert your devotion to this one duty. Let all mankind benefit from the overflow of your loving spiritual ministry, enlightening intellectual communion, and uplifting social service. But none of these humanitarian labors, nor all of them, should be permitted to take the place of proclaiming the gospel. These mighty ministrations are the social byproducts of the still more mighty and sublime ministrations and transformations wrought in the heart of the kingdom believer by the living Spirit of truth and by the personal realization that the faith of a spirit-born man confers the assurance of living fellowship with the eternal God. All right. Yep. Yep. Let all mankind benefit from the overflow of your loving spiritual ministry, enlightening intellectual communion, and uplifting social service. Okay, but you still have to preach the gospel. I still have to tell people about Jesus. Jesus is the King of the universe, the creator of the universe. That's true. Yeah, but everybody's gonna be okay. I guess I'm with unity. I don't want to make, I don't know, divisive feelings between myself and other people by, I think you have to use discretion when you're doing that, when you're preaching. Preach the gospel of the kingdom. To me, that sounds like, oh gosh, you know what I mean? But it's just telling what I believe in, you know? You must not seek to promulgate truth nor to establish righteousness by the power of civil governments or by the enaction of secular laws. Here we go. Again, the governments have got no business saying what religious truth is. No church and state collusion. Keep them separate. You may always labor to persuade men's minds, but you must never dare to compel them. You must not forget the great law of human fairness, which I have taught you in positive form. Whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do even so to them. So if I want my faith to be respected, I have to respect the faith of other people. When a kingdom believer is called upon to serve the civil government, let him render such service as a temporal citizen of such a government, albeit such a believer should display in his civil service all of the ordinary traits of citizenship as these have been enhanced by the spiritual enlightenment of the ennobling association of the mind of mortal man with the indwelling spirit of the eternal God. If the unbeliever can qualify as a superior civil servant, you should seriously question whether the roots of truth in your heart have not died from the lack of the living waters of combined spiritual communion and social service. Okay, so if somebody who's not a believer can be a better civil servant than me, than somebody who is a believer, then okay, the consciousness of sonship with God should quicken the entire life service of every man, woman, and child who has become the possessor of such a mighty stimulus to all the inherent powers of a human personality. So saying that people who are believers make really good social servants. I'm not sure if I like this sentence though. If the unbeliever can qualify as a superior civil servant, then you, the believer, I guess, you, the believer, should seriously question whether the roots of truth in your heart have not died from the lack of the living waters. So you should take up some social service and demonstrate your faith or your sonship through service to humanity, through serving in your community, in your government, serving society in the best way that you know how, to your capacity, whether that's as in the government or in the any other social volunteer service, whatever you want. People have this horrible mistrust of the government these days. It's like, oh my gosh. Okay. Right. The consciousness of sonship with God should quicken the entire life service of every man, woman, and child who has become the possessor of such a mighty stimulus to all the inherent powers of a human personality. So because we're faithful believers in God, we should have more desire to serve our communities. Okay. Unless your government is this destructive force, which, denies faith in all the, dictatorial government. That's a hard call to make sometimes. I don't know. Okay. You are not to be passive mystics or colorless ascetics. Oh, you should not become dreamers and drifters. Guilty. Supinely trusting in a fictitious providence to provide even the necessities of life. You are indeed to be gentle in your dealings with erring mortals, patient in your intercourse with ignorant men, and forbearing under provocation. But you are also to be valiant in defense of righteousness, mighty in the promulgation of truth, and aggressive in the preaching of this gospel of the kingdom, even to the ends of the earth. Wow. Okay, so I felt like I needed to do more for this, so that I started this little channel, and I've got like how many viewers? Not very many. I don't even know. Probably. Yeah, it'd be nice if I had some viewers, but I think I got to get more comfortable with doing this. Yeah. Maybe I should tell more people I'm doing this. Say, hey, okay. Some people are really good at this YouTube stuff. I'm trying. I'm doing what I can. I'll work on. I'll do more. Yep. Okay. Okay. The gospel of the kingdom is a living truth. I have told you it is like the heaven in the dough, like the leaven in the dough, like the grain of mustard seed. And now I declare that it is like the seed of the living being, which from generation to generation, while it remains the same living seed, unfailingly folds itself in new manifestations and grows acceptably in channels of new adaptation to the peculiar needs and conditions of each successive generation. The revelation I have made to you is a living revelation, and I desire that it shall bear appropriate fruits in each individual and in each generation in accordance with the laws of spiritual growth, increase, and adaptive development. Wow. So go out there and preach. Go out there and preach your faith. From generation to generation, this gospel must show increasing vitality and exhibit greater depth of spiritual power. It must not be permitted to become merely a sacred memory, a mere tradition about me and the times in which we now live. Okay, you got to make it, you got to live it. Don't just remember Jesus. Go out there and be like Jesus. Do what Jesus did. Ooh, gosh, this sounds so hard. What if they do something? What if they're mean to me? Oh no. Okay. And forget not, we have made no direct attack upon the persons or upon the authority of those who sit in Moses' seat, which is the Pharisees, right? Or the Sadducees, the Jews, the religious authorities, more generally speaking. We only offered them a new light, which they have so vigorously rejected. We have assailed them only by the denunciation of their spiritual disloyalty to the very truths which they profess to teach and safeguard. Right. We've only told them to practice what you're preaching. Do what you tell your followers to do. But they're on this, we're better than everybody else because we're the chosen to lead and all this, and Jesus is basically coming down on that. He's one of us. Jesus, above all things, is one of us, to the point where he did not spare himself any he died. I like to say he died with us, or as one of us. Not so much, I don't know if I buy this, he died for my sins, but he gives me courage to go out and be my best self, because he did that and he suffered the consequence of just living the best life he could live. He died as one of us. He didn't put himself above us. He was one of us. We clashed with these established leaders and recognized rulers only when they threw themselves directly in the way of the preaching of the gospel of the kingdom to the sons of men. And even now, it is not we who assail them, but they who seek our destruction. Do not forget that you are commissioned to go forth preaching only the good news. You are not to attack the old ways. You are skillfully to put the leaven of new truth in the midst of the old beliefs. Let the Spirit of truth do his own work. Let controversy come only when they who despise the truth force it upon you. Right. So don't go out and fight with people. Just suggest to them, well, maybe there's another way to think about this. So just Let them come to you. Let the Spirit of truth do the work of making the dough raise or making that truth grow. All you could do is go out there and plant the seeds. Just suggest something. Don't use any coercion or any arguments. Just say, hey, I think it's all good. Let controversy come only when they who despise the truth force it upon you. But when the willful unbeliever attacks you, do not hesitate to stand in vigorous defense of the truth, which has saved and sanctified you. Okay, so if you're attacked, then you got to say, yep, it's not the way, son. Throughout the vicissitudes of life, remember always to love one another. Do not strive with men, even with unbelievers. Show mercy even to those who despitefully abuse you. Show yourselves to be loyal citizens, upright artisans, praiseworthy neighbors, devoted kinsmen, understanding parents, and sincere believers in the brotherhood of the Father's kingdom. And my spirit shall be upon you now and even to the end of the world. When Jesus had concluded his teaching, it was almost 1:00, and they immediately went back to the camp where David and his associates had lunch ready for them. Okay, very nice. Very nice. Thank you for listening. That was a great one today. I feel really good. Okay, see you next time.